When you're sitting at a table playing a tabletop role playing game, there are going to be times when you're a game master and you need to play a chaotic evil character, or you're a player and the adventure calls for a chaotic evil character, or you just happen to want to play a chaotic evil character. Well, it can be a little bit difficult to not just go all in on the crazy, mindless evilness of the character, but there is a way to play it. So, my name is Don. I'm trying to be the Sly Strategist, and let's go ahead and get into it. Now, before we begin, it's important to remember that role playing evil characters, especially chaotic evil characters, is all about exploring different perspectives and motivations. There's a reason and a goal for everyone, and mindless violence is not really an alignment. I mean, you can think of it this way: is a tornado evil? It causes mindless destruction, but kind of the big difference there is there's no motivation. Even a classic movie zombie has a motivation to eat some brains. So, really, the big thing is to try to remember that there needs to be some motivation. It's not just about causing violence or death, although, you know what? That could be part of the motivation. So, unless you want to play a combat or murder simulator for some reason, and in truth, that could be fun if you like combat or maybe the tactical or the actual hands on side of the game. But it's really hard to try to develop a story around that. And at that point, it's not really a tabletop role playing game. There's no veneer to the mechanics. Now, it almost seems a little trite to do this, but really quickly, let's take a look about what the pre-remaster player's guide says about alignment before we get to edicts and anathemas. The player's guide describes evil as this: your character has an evil alignment if they're willing to victimize others for their own selfish gain, and even more so if they enjoy inflicting harm. Now, one of the big things to take out of that sentence is their own selfish gain. So there's a reason to do these things. And chaotic is if your character values flexibility, creativity, and spontaneity over consistency. They have a chaotic alignment. Though this doesn't mean they make decisions by choosing randomly. Chaotic characters believe lawful characters are too inflexible to judge each situation by its own merits or take advantage of opportunities. So it isn't mindless. There are things that both the chaotic side defines and the evil side defines, that there is still a goal to being chaotic evil. So, when discussing evil characters and specifically chaotic evil characters, some players immediately associate with them with a reckless tendency to indiscriminately kill individuals throughout the game world. Those players who gravitate towards that kind of behavior often attribute it to being chaotic evil, but it's important to note that one's alignment doesn't really serve as a justification. Unless you're playing in a story with no story whatsoever, this approach to a player can be really frustrating for other players and particularly for the game master, as it's going to hinder whatever progression they had to the story. Even characters with the most extreme chaotic evil alignment that you can think of in modern entertainment, such as the Joker or Loki, do not randomly kill individuals without some underlying reason or hidden agenda, no matter how disturbed or psychotic they may appear. This distinction really lies at the heart of a well developed evil character, as opposed to what is often referred to as a murder hobo. It's crucial for any character, even when engaged in evil actions, to possess some sort of discernible goal. Goal driven evil characters are more likely to establish productive relationships with party members, even being aligned with good characters, ultimately contributing to the creation of a more engaging narrative for everyone involved. And you really can have a lot of depth to a chaotic evil character that isn't just a murder hobo. So even the most chaotic evil gods have edicts and anathemas that provide a goal. For example, Rovagug, which to me is the definition of destruction and chaotic evil, has edicts and anathemas that can give you motivation. Edicts are destroy all things and free Rovagug from his prison. Anathema, create something new, let material ties restrain you, torture a victim, or otherwise delay its destruction. Even if it is to free Rovagug or end the torture of an oppressive regime, your player can set aside immediate gratification to accomplish a goal. Now, creating a compelling evil character is really about understanding their backstory. What events in their lives twisted them into the villain they are today? What past traumas or deep rooted beliefs fuel their actions? The more you understand their motivations, the more authentic your portrayal will be. One of the first things you can do is give the chaotic evil character a personality. Once you've developed a backstory, it's time to dive into their personality. An introverted character or a really abrasive character may miss out on numerous opportunities to manipulate others for their own ends or employ deceit to extricate themselves from challenging situations. If your character is the sole evil aligned member of the party, it's beneficial to cultivate trust among your companions and potentially assume a leadership role, trying to become the face of the group. This approach doesn't always have to entail deceiving fellow players or exploiting other characters. Instead, as the evil character, you can facilitate the attainment of collective goals more effectively because you're unafraid to engage in morally ambiguous actions whenever you deem it necessary. To this end, many evil characters possess a charismatic demeanor that enables them to employ deception or intimidation as a means to achieve their objectives. When you're working on developing a character like that, it's always advisable to allocate some points into charisma, even if your chosen class doesn't primarily rely on charisma based abilities. By bolstering your deception, diplomacy, and intimidation skills, you become more inclined to leverage these attributes, enhancing the role playing experience, not just for yourself, but for other people at the table. It would be really, really silly to deliver a long, lengthy, menacing speech to an NPC or to plot with other NPCs or to plot around your companions only to discover that you possess a negative modifier when the GM calls for an intimidation, diplomacy, or deception check. So think about how your character interacts with others and the impact they have on the world around them. Evil characters can be funny, they can be witty, they can be sarcastic. Incorporate these elements into your role play to add some depth and complexity to the character's persona. Now, one other thing to keep in mind is the physicality of your evil character. Consider their appearance, their mannerisms, the way they carry themselves. Are they a very suave, slick type character? Are they the epitome of intimidation, all dark and red glowing? Do they slink into the shadows or do they stride confidently through the world? These details will make your character more believable and more memorable. Something else to keep in mind as a player, not necessarily for a GM, is for a player, your party is the protagonist of the story. You aren't necessarily the hero or the villain. Some players may equate being evil with assuming the villain role. However, it's important to remember that in the context of pretty much any story, the player characters are the central protagonists, not the end villain, even if they possess evil traits. Think about some of the great villains in stories that you liked and the villains that were most likely to perceive themselves as champions of righteousness. Players who express a desire to eliminate town guards, topple governments, and pilfer from the masses often do so in rebellion against oppressive or indifferent systems. This perspective is really a bit crucial when trying to devise an overarching plan or objectives for an evil character. Grandiose schemes like world destruction or trying to achieve godlike power typically remain beyond the reach of a player character unless really specific circumstances are in place and the game master and the entire group have committed to telling a tale from the outset. At least until War of the Immortals comes out, because that sounds like it might do something similar. So instead, evil characters can find motivation in personal drivers such as greed, a thirst for revenge, or deep seated hatred. On the other hand, they might also serve an evil deity. But even so, the deities are going to have edicts and anathemas that can drive a plot. These personal motivations render them more relatable as player characters, increasing the likelihood of cooperation with other adventurers, and offer the game master an opportunity to chart a more plausible path for them to pursue their objectives rather than just trying to keep up with the guy who keeps killing everything. And kind of the best way I can summarize this, in your mind, whether you are evil or not, You should be the hero or at least the anti hero of the story. And one of the last things I'd like to bring up is to respect boundaries. Tabletop role playing games are all about cooperative play and ensuring that everyone at the table is having fun and having a good time. You're there to be social. If you're playing a chaotic evil character in a non evil party, 100% discuss with the GM how much should the other players know, and at the very least, warn the players that there might be some twists. Both the GM and the players bear some responsibility of being attuned to the boundaries and sensitive topics such as phobias or graphic violence that each player may have. By doing so, you are allowing them to be avoided during the game. However, when assuming the role of an evil character, and really any character, it becomes equally essential to acknowledge these limitations. Evil characters within the game may engage in actions such as the murder of innocent NPCs, kidnapping, inflicting harm or abuse, or even torturing individuals for information, all of which can potentially render the gaming experience uncomfortable or distressing for some players who just aren't prepared for it. Prior to crafting your character, it's imperative to engage in an open dialogue with fellow players. Try to recognize and respect each other's individual boundaries and ensure that the game remains basically a safe and enjoyable space for everyone. Now, playing a chaotic evil character or being a GM for a chaotic evil non player character can be a lot of fun, can be super enjoyable, and can be great for the entire table. However, you have to keep in mind kind of what your limitations are and the fact that chaotic evil or not, they should still have goals, motivations, and things that kind of keep them on track to still being whatever they are, which is a character in a story. So I do hope you like this video, and if you did, feel free to like, subscribe, or hit that notification bell. But whatever you do, I hope you have a great day and happy adventuring. Thanks.